Welcome to the TryPod. What could be the final TryPod ever after 11 proud years. More on that later. The future is uncertain, but you know what else is uncertain? The NRL Grand Final this weekend. That's what I'm here with some special guests to break down Brisbane versus Melbourne from a punting perspective. Let's introduce everyone, and I suppose let us know if you can sing, guys. We might need a singer on Sunday. Let's go around the grounds, I guess, choirs, and Padonis is on his way, but typically late. We'll start with Nicole. How you doing, mate? Thanks for jumping in.
Hey, good, thanks, mate. Really, really excited for the NRL Grand Final. I watched both the prelims, having way too many beers, so I hope my analysis is on point. Fingers crossed.
That's it. We're going to talk about the prelims before we get to the big dance, and we got Ben Willie in the house as well. How you doing, bro?
Good, brother. Hey, TryPod fam, how we doing? Pumped for the final. Broncos have limped in there somehow and up against a dangerous Storm side. Very, very keen.
And hopefully we don't get too much confusion. There's Benny's side by side. Benny Howard is in the bottom left from where I can see it. How are you going, mate? You've had a pretty ridiculous couple of years in terms of a winning clip that you've shared to the community.
Yeah, I'm on a 0-3 at the moment, so we won't talk about that too much. But, it's been a good few years. But, it's going to be an exciting grand final too. Really good, I think, attacking style sort of teams now. So rather than Penrith, I think everyone's a bit happy not to see them in the final.
I heard that narrative, we don't want that again. I feel like it would have still been a sweet final, but I'm not complaining. No one is going to be more excited than Padonis, who will join us shortly, who was in attendance in Brisbane. So maybe we save that game. We'll talk about Sharks Cronulla in a moment. You'll have to wait, guys, for best bets till the end. I know I've given them first 5 minutes every pod this year, but just the nature of it, this structure, I'll share my bets at the end. We did go 2-0 on pod best bets. I had either team 1-12 in Brisbane Penrith. You couldn't have had a much closer finish than that. And I had neither team to score 31. There wasn't even 31 points combined. So I'm 60 and 42 for the year. Example stake 100 on each play. Each official play, you're up $1,300. And I do have two best bets, but I'm teasing because I will give them at the back end of the show. And the boys joining me are armed with their favorite picks as well. And it's going to be tricky with four of us and a fifth man joining. I'm going to try and be like Adam Reynolds and not overplay my hand. Just get the ball to the right areas. And hopefully I can still be clinical when I'm called upon. We'll talk about Brisbane in a moment. The thought did cross my mind a year ago. We did a season recap with, shout out to Tristan. We lost that connection this year, but Tristan did say a year ago the best value team was going to be Brisbane at $17 and money was going to come for them with the narrative that Madge could change the joint, and then Ben Hunt signing followed. And, in my prelim pick, I picked Storm and Brisbane in my prelims, but I also picked Storm to win the comp this season in the season preview. I know that was a pretty popular pick. Let's talk about the Storm first of all. So, Nicole, you said you had a fair bit to drink, but was there any moment or takeaway that stood out to you in the 22-14 win by Melbourne?
Yep, I'm going to keep my analysis short and sweet, guys. I'm obviously waiting for the try score stuff, the tips towards the end. But I think my one little takeaway from the Storm game, I thought that Stefano Utoikamanu on the field has obviously been elite at least the last 3 or 4 weeks, if not the last couple of months. But I thought his post-game comments were kind of interesting. I'm sure you guys have heard them, but he's basically saying the Broncos players are pricks, or I forgot what word he used, but stuck up, I think it was. So I thought that was really interesting because obviously Haas has already replied, and I think the one thing that the Storm are going to have to do, because these sides are so even in so many ways, but Stefano, if he can have a big game, that gives him a shot against Haas and Carrigan. So he's my little standout note from that game.
What did you make of it, Benny Williamson?
Well, actually, I took my young fella to the movies, and I thought the movie was going to be over pre-game, and it was a 2.5 hour Japanese anime thing, and it finished with the last 20 minutes. So I missed it. But I watched the highlights in the last 20 minutes and whatnot. And a bit of build up to that. The Storm finishing second for the year, I had them to be the top non-Queensland team, which obviously the Raiders pipped them there and then out in straight sets. But very few teams have been able to outgrind the Storm, and they just proved it again. The Sharks had been in good form over the last 2 weeks. They didn't play awful. They didn't make the most of their chances in that game. But like getting in a wrestle with the Storm, they just continue to prove that they are the grittiest team. And I didn't see anything that sort of disproved that last week. So, I think coming into this one, Broncos going to have their hands full in that space.
And Benny Howard, sorry to bring up old wounds. If you had a tip on that game, let us know. But also your biggest takeaway.
Yeah, no, I don't think I had a tip on that one. But the Storm there, I just feel like Munster, he just comes alive in those finals games. Like he's just insane. Like I think he ran for about nearly 200 meters, 1 try assist. I think Harry Grant didn't really have a massive game, but he didn't need to because he's got such an awesome spine with the other 3 of Pappenhausen. It's also sort of coming into a bit of form and Hughes. Yeah, we all saw what he did with what is meant to be a broken arm, palming off someone and going under basically the stick. So, yeah, they're a good side this Storm. They're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, for me, I just thought the 2 match-winning moments, like there wasn't a lot between them. I thought Cronulla was so tough. Most teams would have got pumped on that Friday night because I thought Melbourne was so ruthless and so professional. But the Sharks actually did well to hang in there. But I thought 2 moments are the difference, and it's Pappenhausen and Munster. It's them combining for that set play. Like it was premeditated to kick through for money to kick through for Pappy when Kennedy came into the defensive line, and that try was key before half time, and then combining for that tackle on Nikora. I know it actually was a high shot, and then the Sharks took the 2 down 8, but it saved 6 points. So that's a 2 moments by those 2 players showing their class as well as their desperation, and that's the difference. Melbourne wins it by 8 points. Padonis might be in the house, and if he is, now I can't. I'll find him somehow. If I can get Padonis in there, welcome, mate. Look, you can say good day to everyone, and we're talking about Storm Sharks. If you had a takeaway out of that game, just roll into it.
How are we, fellas? Hope everyone's well out there. I'm coming down with a bit of a flu from the weekend. My throat's a bit sore still, so bear with me as we move through. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible for some of my key points. But takeaway for me on Sharks and Storm, not hearing what the other boys have said. I think it was a really tight game, close game. I think it really showed the difference in the 2 spines and the key playmakers. They got the Storm over the line, and Sharks probably fell short. Lacked probably 1 or 2 class plays in some of those key areas for me, and Storm were the beneficiary of some brilliant play and defensive play from Munster and Pappenhausen when it looked like Brendan Nikora was going to score for all money to tie the game up.
And let's go back to you, Nicole. Panthers Broncos, so we'll give Padonis a chance to rest his voice, and then he can have the last word on that game. That was another all-time classic. What was your favourite moment?
Yeah, look, obviously an absolute epic. I think I'll keep it simple again. I think the Broncos, that game against the Raiders, obviously like an all-time legendary finals game, but to back that up 2 weeks later and show like, what was it, 14? Yeah, 14-0. To come back from 14-0 in their next final, I think that cannot be underestimated, like the resilience that they've shown. And it's also like, if they happen to be, say, a try down and there's 15 minutes to go, that they're not going to be like overwhelmed. So I think just from a mentality point of view, I think that was huge.
Ben Willie, did you see this one?
Yeah, no, I was there. I was ready for that one. I had the Broncos over 11.5 points in the second half. So when Walshy kicked that goal and it hit the post and bounced off, I was absolutely livid. I'd early crowed in my chat too, and then everyone was saying that was the reason why he missed the conversion, which is classic. But just to build on something I read from Padonis, and I've been following a bit myself. Last week he mentioned in his tip the aggregate of the last 20 minutes, and like Nicole said as well, against the Raiders, back against the Riff, they just get a sniff of that momentum and then they run away with it. And all on the back of Payne Haas. I'm not massive on their forward pack, but when he's leading the way, they all just seem to follow. So, I mean, I think in terms of like dynamic play and attack, obviously they're red hot coming in this one, but whether they can sustain that for long enough to get enough points against the Storm is probably where I'm at when I'm looking at that game.
Yeah, just to respond to that, Brisbane has 5 14-point comebacks this season, and they're all against good teams. They're down 14 at home to the Sharkies. They come back and win that. They don't win that. They don't finish top 4. They're down. You might remember better than me, Padonis, or anyone. Was it more than 14 points down against the Bulldogs on a Thursday night?
Yeah,
18-0.
Yeah,
right,
the
win that
conversion,
one.
I think.
Finns, we had them at one point. We had them in the second half.
14 for the Finns as well.
Lead. Yeah, and we got Walshed, and then and the Finns are a good team, guys. They are. And the Raiders, of course, you guys know the story in Penrith. It's like Sharks, Bulldogs, Finns, Raiders, Panthers. Like that's a who's who. That's just about everyone except the Storm, who they've been able to come back against. And goal kicking, I knew we would talk about it just briefly. So when I realised Walsh was kicking, I thought, well, that's a slight disadvantage because like Reynolds is the better kicker, but it's probably more Reynolds can kick. He was fit to play, but he didn't want to do all the extra practice all week. Walsh is on a roll. And Walshy, the first conversion off the Stags try, it only just snuck inside the post. So it was a bit shaky. So I genuinely thought when Willison scored, they should let Reynolds take the kick because it was just to the left of the post. And that's like slotting peas for Reynolds. He would have definitely got it. And I was thinking, Walsh's kick was not convincing. And sure enough, he actually missed it. And then I don't know exactly, but honestly, I'd love to know if you've got any insight on ground. I just feel like Walsh and Reynolds probably looked at each other and Reynolds was maybe like, you want me to take it? Or Walshy was like, do you want to take this one? Obviously on the back of what had happened and the importance of that kick. And I'd love to hear sort of your take on the atmosphere in general. The roof must have come off. So maybe we'll go to you next, Padonis. Give us some takeaways from being in attendance.
I've never been in an atmosphere quite like it, winning across like multiple sports. Been to a couple Premier League games as well overseas, and this was next level. I think everyone was behind the boys. I think there's been a different energy in the fan base as well with what Maguire's brought this year, and I think everyone's bought into what the club is trying to achieve. And it's been a long drought for Brisbane supporters at 19 years without a premiership, and I think everyone was just part of the occasion. The fact that it was Penrith as well, that they've won 4 straight comps and you're ending a dynasty and you're trying to make up for 23, it was the perfect storm of like atmosphere and conditions. And once Mariner scored, and in a Brian To'o-esque, because he sort of barged his way over when he had no right to score, and the stadium shook, and then I think there was an eerie silence when the conversion was happening. And I think looking from my vantage point up in the grandstands, definitely looked like to me Reynolds went over to Walsh and grabbed the tee off him. I know that Walsh said post-game that he sort of said to Reno, you can take the kick, but it was a sort of case of this is my moment. I'm the kicker, I'm the captain, give me the tee, and slotted it to perfection, and the rest is history. And then the last minute was frantic and typified by Payne Haas's effort trying to chase Cleary down on that 40-point conversion, which, by the way, I think Penrith sort of butchered that a little bit. Different to what we saw in the Gold Coast game. And I don't think Cleary looked at the clock and the tackle count and sort of sprinted back when it was too late. And then the ball went to Yo and he didn't have the distance to throw it 20 metres behind him. But, yeah, it's a game of missed opportunities, I think. If I'm putting my unbiased hat on, I think Brisbane scored a few tries that they'd probably admit themselves not through execution and good play. It was more luck and like being in the right place at the right time with some of the tries that we did score. But to come back from 14-0 down after what happened 2 years ago in the grand final was an unbelievable game and occasion, and so great to be a part of it and make the trip up for it.
So that was obviously at Suncorp, and you mentioned Reynolds stepping up in the moment. It is funny, the symmetry that the Panthers look. I think the right terminology is the dynasty is not over. You hear the talk about Penrith and they're saying, oh, we learned a lot. We've got a young team. Usually a team that made 5 straight grand finals, their problem wouldn't be they're too young. Their problem would be they're getting old. This Penrith team is still bloody good, is young, and was that close to actually making a 6th grand final. But the symmetry that the streak is over. The streak began at Suncorp 4 years ago. The streak ends at Suncorp, and it came down to a Reynolds conversion from out wide on both occasions. You're right, Padonis. I feel like Cleary, and he admitted himself, he was in 2 minds. He sort of felt, we're on a roll here. We might try and score the winning try. And then just on the 5th play, he sort of thought, the odds are maybe we're better off with the 2-point shot, but he wasn't in position like he as opposed to the Titans game where he actually was hanging, but well behind and ready to in position. He literally, even though it wasn't a good pass, Cleary caught it inside the 40 and then had to run backwards. Not even the greatest player in the world.
I think they made too many meters.
What do you reckon, Benny Howard?
Yeah, I think they made too many meters off one of the plays. So I think that might have threw Cleary off a little bit. Or he's sort of like umming and ahhing about going further and then just having a crack. And then I think he started retreating way too late. So, yeah, it was really uncanny of the Panthers to do something unorganized like that, especially because of how clutch, Cleary has been during, NRL seasons. But I did hear something about Walsh. Apparently Walsh was not meant to be kicking, but pre-game, I think maybe Reynolds must have got a bit of tightness. So then Walsh, I don't know if this could be a Walsh thing to do, saying, I didn't have any practice through the week, therefore that's why I was kicking shit. But yeah, he definitely was kicking shit. I thought the same thing when he took that first one, I was like, he's not hitting it right. I wouldn't be surprised if Reynolds takes the next one. Didn't take the next one and he missed it. I was spewing as well because I had Broncos overs, so I needed every point I could after a first half with 0 points, which I couldn't believe. But yeah, no, it was a great game. I honestly I didn't think the Broncos would come back to the point they did. I knew they had it in them, but I just thought the Panthers would have been clinical enough where they're just wearing and tearing, kicking to the corners like they were doing so well that first half. But yeah, Walsh somehow breaks the tackle, gets that pass away to Mariner, which bounces could have bounced anywhere, and it just ends up in his hands and somehow gets through. It was a pretty crazy moment. Would have been good to be at the game, that's for sure.
Man, for all the things that Walshy has done this year and on this crazy run, exactly what you said there, that he sets up the winning try with strength. That's like the one thing that the defense should have over him. He actually carries McLean and breaks out of it and shouldn't really have been able to get that offload away to Mariner. And and you know what? I then thought, Walshy's going to have his winning moment. Like he missed that conversion or hit the post. He'll step, even though it was the right move to let Reynolds take it, I reckon Walshy would have probably kicked the hard one. For me, that in that game, it's won by the Broncos defense. There were multiple repeat sets on Brisbane's line at 14-0. And I had either team 1-12. I'm not thinking Brisbane needs to hang on here to win. I'm thinking they need to hang on here to not be blown out. And Cleary did go for the KO. I think it was a short ball to Garner on fifth tackle, and he was tackled a metre out. And Cronk in commentary said, mark that down. Cleary went for the kill shot, not the repeat set. And then Brisbane got a penalty and then did score the Stags try. It's still 14-8, still a long way to go. And then, you'd remember this, but honest, that it's game over if Penrith scores again. 14-6, yeah, with, in the final 15 minutes. And Penrith got a penalty. Some people saying, you take the 2, do you go up 10? But you don't know that Walsh is going to miss the conversion either. And obviously, it's going for the kill for Penrith.
3 consecutive sets.
Smoothie trapped a kick after 3 straight sets. And Brisbane got down the other end. You get the Willison try, and then you still need another try because of that misconversion. But Brisbane had that momentum, and that goes back to, a lot of people questioned Madge. I didn't write Madge off when he got the job, but I wasn't certain his methods would work. So obviously he's proven correct. I thought if flogging your players to oblivion and just getting them ridiculously fit to the point of where they're physically sick, I thought if that worked, every club would do it. But there's a reason why, it's not that simple. But there's, the toughness that Brisbane showed at the end of that game. I don't know if Kevy Walters' Kevy coach team would be that fit and that tough at the end. I know Kevy coached a Brisbane team that was up 16 against Penrith and lost. And Madge is coaching this team and they're down 14 to Penrith and they win. It's just, it is crazy. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that 2023 redemption narrative as well, that it aligns with the AFL. Of course, the AFL Grand Finals on Saturday. Brisbane Lions lost in 2023 to Collingwood, got the revenge in the prelim, went on and won the Grand Final. Brisbane lost it 24 hours later, got the revenge in the prelim this year, to be determined about the Grand Final. But let's stick with Brisbane, and I want to ask each of you the question, if Brisbane wins it, you don't have to show your hand yet, but if Brisbane is to win, how do they do it? Starting with you, Nicole.
Yep. I think the question we had originally was how do the Broncos win, or how can we how do we see them winning, right? And I think the way I think about it is like if they almost have like, I know you wouldn't think like that being the Broncos, but you almost have like a bit of a free crack early. You know, it's a grand final. The Storm aren't going to expect Reece Walsh to get a whole bunch of ball like first 10, 15 minutes. But I almost feel like if I was a Broncos fan, I'd feel like if we do fall, let's say you're 6 points behind with 30 to go or at halftime, you're not going to be scared after the last couple of weeks. So I think there's a couple of ways the Broncos can win it. But, you know, if I was a fan, I just want them to go hard early because you got Haas, you got Carrigan, go all guns blazing. And if you do fall, let's say, try behind because you make the odd error, you've come back from a lot worse. So, yeah.
You know what? I meant to also set a table before I hand over to Ben Willie. So the Storm are a 2.5-point favourite. The total is 40.5. Team lists are out. Of course, Carrigan's in and will start at 13, at least according to the team list. Smoothie moves to the bench. Tolty, the unfortunate man, to miss out. But I was wondering in my mind, I wonder how Brisbane will really start. I wonder if you go additional power and you put Smoothie, could start at 9, and whether Hunty is in your halves or whether you're going to start with Mam. You know, Mam is actually named at 14, of course, but we don't know for certain what Brisbane's going to do. For now, it's Reynolds and Hunt in the halves, which means the starting halves are a combined age of 70. But Ben Willie, how does Brisbane get this done?
I think with their goal kicking, I'll look back to the last head-to-head they had. And the Broncos ended up getting a try in the 79th minute. I think it was 30-14 in the end score. And obviously Jerome Hughes went down early in that one, which didn't help the Storm. But Walsh kicked 4 penalty goals that game. And I'll get into, I think, my advantage if I was leaning the Broncos' way. Renault's kicking conversion is, I think, 85%, and Meany's is 72%. And we saw last week that Meany was pretty rubbish with the boot. That killed an overs play on 38-5 for me because there was 4 missed conversions and they didn't take the kick at the end, which killed me. But I think if the Broncos are to win, they'll be taking points when they can. I think if they get a penalty out front early, they'll take the 2 first. But I wouldn't be shocked if that is like a consistent thing throughout the game. I think if they can get on top of Melbourne incrementally and just stay with them, like Nicole said, if they're down 6 at halftime, they're not going to be scared. I don't know how many times they can pull a rabbit out of a hat. But for me, if the Broncos are to find a way to win, they're going to be taking points in almost like a rugby union type way. They're going to be kicking a few penalty goals, make sure they're in front by 2 or at least only behind by 2. And, I think with a superior kicker, if that's the move, then, they can certainly win that way.
And Padonis, you were in Brisbane. I don't know if you did any consulting with Madge, but can you tell us the game plan? How does Brisbane get it done?
Yeah, I just think it comes down to the belief and the momentum of the squad, Winnie. I think looking at the 2 fixtures that they've played Melbourne so far this year, Maguire will show them the tape. And I think in that first game before all the hamstring injuries went down, I think Brisbane were clearly the better team getting on top in that one, in that first 25 minutes. Game 2 to make the top 4 as an underdog at home. They lifted and got the win there, so I don't think they're going to hold any fear of the Storm. I think in the past, some of these iterations of the Melbourne Storm team, they've entered the game and sort of beaten the team before they get off the bus with some of the star power and just the way that they've been able to get into these grand finals consistently. But I think Maguire's got to have different steely edge about him, and I think the way that they've come into the grand final here, they can just continue on with what they're doing and trying to be an unbiased perspective, but if I was Brisbane, I'd be full of confidence with nothing to fear.
The stat is that the Storm have beaten Brisbane 17 of the last 19, but Brisbane did win the most recent matchup, which means it was 17 of 18 going into round 27. And I will say, like, the best 2 defensive efforts of the year for Brisbane was that round 27 game where they had to win to make top 4 against the Storm, and, of course, the prelim on Sunday. And I think Brisbane's going to have to replicate that level of defence from those 2 games. There's a blueprint there. What do you think, Benny Howard?
Does anyone remember the stat with Panthers, how many finals games they won in a row up until the Broncos just broke that one? Does anyone remember
14.
that one? I think 14.
Yeah.
So I think the Broncos, they just keep breaking these sort of stats. I don't think they mean much to them. I think you just touched on then 70 years of experience in the halves. Over the last 25 years, I always noticed that usually it's a team with experienced halves that are taking out the premiership. But obviously the dynasty with the Penrith Panthers, pretty young sort of halves bearing. But anytime before that, you look at Cooper Cronk jumping over the Roosters, getting them 2 premierships fairly easily. And then before that as well with the Storm, having the Cameron Smith in the spine. I feel like, the experience there will help the Broncos. But, I feel like it's going to be Payne Haas. He's just, like Benny Willie sort of said, the forward pack isn't that great for the Broncos. But with Payne Haas on the field, whether that's 80 minutes or 70 minutes, they're a monster. He can break tackles. He can also score a try now. He's got that in his game, and he's just an engine and a monster. So I think that's going to be why. But I'd love to see Walshy just tear it up. I think that would be a good story as well as Ben Hunt maybe slotting another field goal for that redemption of 2023.
Well, 3 things there. So the stats busting. I mean, what about? Do you know how long it's been since Nathan Cleary lost a day game?
Oh, I heard that one as well on Fox League.
It's been 2 days because he lost 2 days ago. But before that, it was 2,000 days. He did not lose a day game since 2019. So, I mean, that sounded made up. That's is ridiculous. And
to be fair to that one, Winnie, I was thinking about that actually from a handicapping point of view. Penrith in that era, I think a lot of the marquee games over the last 6 years, they probably would have been playing them at night time, and then you get the day game against Newcastle, Gold Coast, Tigers. So I think that's a little bit skewed, but still, it's impressive to go that far for sure.
That's a good point.
I don't actually know what the record is. Oh, I heard another one too. Well, what Penrith was when leading by 12 or more at half time, Penrith was.
Yeah, I heard that one as well.
79-0 or 90-something, never lost before. Did anyone?
To be fair, Winnie, it's even more impressive. It wasn't at half time. It was leading by 12 at any point.
Right. That's insane. The Hunt, I just wanted to mention Hunt because you brought him up, Benny Howard. I feel like he's probably the most deserving player to win the comp out of anyone who's going to take the field on Sunday. Of course, he's the only surviving member of the Broncos team from 2015 that lost that heartbreaking grand final, and he's been down to the Dragons for many years after that in between. But it is poetic that he and we all know how that game ended. Oh, and you mentioned Payne Haas, and the funny thing is he's a Goliath, right? But he has also dealt with injury, so I thought, well, he'll have, that extra week off will do him a world of good, but he's still hurting. And I heard other people saying in a breakdown, Payne Haas with the ball is going to be okay. But if he can't move well, Penrith will find him out, and Penrith could exploit Haas defensively because Madge plays in big minutes and he's struggling with his mobility. Well, he had 46 tackles with 0 misses. So, I mean, he's an absolute freak of nature. He's there cleaning up like grubbers in behind. And then you remember when Brisbane wins, you go, oh, geez, they got to dust themselves off again. And they do have 2 less days. But then you remember Paddy Carrigan comes in. That's a pretty handy addition. And Willison hadn't played for a month, so he's pretty fresh. He had 150 metres off the bench. And a lot of you boys said, key to Brisbane winning, is going to start with the middle forwards there. But how about Melbourne? I just want to set the table, but it's pretty simple because it's the same 17 that held strong against the Sharks. Hughes proved his fitness, right, and then some. And Yuto Kamano, I think Nicole mentioned it before. I'm not surprised at all that he's gone to another level since going down to Melbourne. If anything, I was probably surprised he started slow. But I was saying I would have had him in every Blues team game 1, 2, and 3. Now he's the form prop in the comp alongside Haas, and his comments add an extra bit of spice as well. So he's certainly sort of peaking at the right time. So Nicole, how does Storm go about winning this one?
Yep, I'm trying to think of something different here. I reckon these teams, they both have so many attacking strengths. I'm trying to think of something different with maybe the wingers in the air, like Coates and Warbrick, obviously both elite athletes. I'm not going to comment on the Broncos wingers because I haven't watched them that closely in all honesty, but I would back in the Storm wingers above pretty much anyone. And the other thing I think is interesting is their game style with the 4 players in the Storm spine, obviously being really strong ball runners. So if it's one of those games that gets into a grind, they're suited to just rolling ahead, kind of like a big Origin game or obviously a grand final. So I reckon those are a couple of their best shots.
Where do you see the biggest threats, Ben, Willie?
Going to be pretty popular amongst all the punters and whatnot, but it's really hard to look past Harry Grant coming through the middle with just that elite ruck ID. Like, the Broncos with 2 less days rest, Haas obviously on fire, and Paddy's going to be fresh. But the longer that game goes, I think the more susceptible that middle's going to be. And the Broncos' middle section of the field hasn't exactly been a fortress all season. Grant weaving his way around that ruck and Pappy supporting through the middle there. I just see a little bit too much class in those combos and the way that they identify stuff and can do so early. So I think, the game probably will be one around the ruck, and I think the Storm are just a little better in that area, led by the man Harry Grant. Too short for Clive Churchill, but he'll be in plenty of people's bet slips, I'm sure.
I'm going to ask everyone for a Clive Churchill later as well, and I'm going to ask everyone for their tips too. I know people might be thinking we haven't had any bets yet, but there's going to be plenty to action. For Donis, as a staunch Broncos fan, what sort of frightens you the most about Melbourne?
It's got to be the 6, 7, and 9 winning. I think Benny touched on it as well just then. I think Melbourne, it's pretty even across the park generally, but I think Melbourne do have an advantage to the 6, 7, and 9 if I put my unbiased lens on. And Harry Grant single-handedly was the difference in that first encounter at Amy Park. I know that we had some disruption with players coming off, but I think, between the 6, 7, and 9 they showed it last week against the Sharks with their class, and that's going to be a key point to take note of. And obviously the aerial threat in the air, as Nicole touched on as well, trying to limit time and space for that 5th tackle kick. And they're definitely going to get chances at some point, but restricting their meters as much as possible to make sure that they're not in good ball territory on 5th tackle is the key.
But Padonis, you'd have to admit Pappenhausen is equal to Walsh. You'd admit that, right?
Look, if I was being honest, Winnie, I'd say Pappenhausen's an 8 out of 10 player and Walsh is a 10. So I think he's just got a couple levels above Pappenhausen that he doesn't have. And I think we saw it in that Suncorp game, round 26. I think there was a bit of pushback in the group there. Some people that were saying that Pappenhausen's equal, if not better than Walsh, but I think that this run that Walsh has been on since has proven otherwise. And Pappenhausen has been guilty of making quite a few mistakes in his own right, but everyone seems to pick on Walsh's, and they don't really look at Pappenhausen the same way, even though his error count is right up there with Reece for the premiership this year.
That's what I was alluding to. Yeah, the round 27 chat where people were giving it to you for saying Walsh was better than Pappenhausen, and then boy, he proved something. But Pappenhausen didn't look right in round 27. Then he got the concussion. I have to say, he actually moved a bit better in the prelim.
Yep.
Benny Howard, what do you reckon is the key to Storm success?
Yeah, I was sort of on the same boat with Padonis there in the comment section. I think we're battling a few of them there, but I feel like Walsh's ceiling is a lot higher than Pappenhausen's, but he does have errors in him. But like Padonis did just touch on, Pappenhausen's had a few decent errors and he's been a bit out of whack, I think, maybe from the head knock. So, but in saying that, like you just touched on, when he has brought himself back into form. I feel like Pappenhausen, there's no question marks over him at the moment. The combination of that whole spine is just singing. And Nicole's already, I had it written down, but I might as well touch on it quickly, is the wingers, they've got it all over the aerial contest when it comes to Brisbane. I feel like Cronulla somehow did nullify a bit of it, even though they've got Mulatalo on one side. I thought Warbrick would have got a lot more kicks his way, as well as Coates anyway, but it didn't happen. So maybe if they follow that sort of blueprint, the Broncos, maybe they can stop that. But yeah, it's more than likely going to be Munt stuff for me. Money Magic, he has just been, like he touched on it on Fox Sports, he's playing like a lock and a ball player. So he's taking those sort of tough carries, but then he's also keeping the middle sort of second guessing, and he's putting people through holes, running X's and having people coming under him. Yeah, I just feel like he's a pretty safe bet if you can get him at decent odds for a better not disclose that yet, but we're meant to be leaving that.
That's a good point about mitigating the winger aerial advantage. I thought the same, and I thought part of it was Cronulla limiting the Storm territory, so they didn't have the best field position to put up those attacking kicks. That's going to be key for Brisbane too. Of course, Walsh is untouchable at the moment. So it's only jesting with Adonis there. You know, he had a big error in the Broncos game with that intercept to McLean, but called offside. So Walsh got a reprieve there. For me, if I say, how does Storm win this? Okay, the biggest advantage they've got, or in fact, I think I was going to ask you guys the biggest advantage. So I'll just say it because I think it's in favour of Melbourne. It's rest, because the Storm sort of got to cruise the final month of the season. Like, they knew they were going to be top 2. Grant got suspended, but that gave him a couple of games off. Hughes had the shoulder. Well, the body sort of, got to recuperate. Other key players got a rest in round 26 or 7. Then, of course, Melbourne gets the middle week of the finals off. They get a battle hardened because the Bulldogs and the Sharks pressed them, didn't make it easy. But it's a little different to Brisbane that had to win 2 games that were battles for the ages and had to win every game in the home run to get to the finals. And I suppose the other biggest advantage I can see on the field is Harry Grant at 9. Even if Dozer goes into 9, and I know what he's done in Origin, I think positionally, Harry Grant is such a special player and, can win his matchup and can be the difference. So, Nicole, take it any direction you want. You can go biggest advantage either way, or any other sort of aspect of this match that you're looking forward to.
Yep, I'll pick one out. I did have biggest advantage like Broncos belief, but we've already talked about that. I'm going to talk about Storm with chemistry. So I know their players, if you look at all 4 spine members, they've all had bits and pieces of origin and concussion and injuries and stuff. But these guys have played together consistently now for about 3 seasons since Cam Smith officially moved on. Whereas with the Broncos, you look at their spine and, okay, fair enough, like Walsh has been on absolute fire. But then you got Reynolds, obviously coming back from the hammy, and I think he's 35 or 36. And then you got Ben Hunt, who's going to probably start in the halves, then go to hooker. Corey Pakes will start, but he's obviously not of the same caliber. So I think there's just like so much movement. And yeah, it can work out for you like it did last week. But I think if I was going to punt on Brisbane, I'd be a little bit concerned that there's like obviously a lot of variables there that I can't quite be as certain with as you would do with the Storm. That's probably the one main thing. Chemistry, I think, will make a difference.
That's a great point. I've got that one as well. Benny Williamson, big advantage either direction in any aspect of this game. You said goal kicking before, didn't you?
Yeah, I'd just be sort of repeating myself there a little bit. I think if the Broncos can, get a few early points and take opportunities to kick goal, I think an advantage for the Broncos in terms of what can help them win is definitely the goal kicking. Reynolds is the superior goal kicker on the field. For me, just to, I guess, piggyback from Nicole, like chemistry, 6, 7, 9. I don't think this year Walsh is probably, you can make an argument that he's been better than Pappy because he's had a pretty inconsistent year. But I think across the park, maybe bar the centres, the Storm are better, more playing time, more experience. And I just think that matters in grand finals. Like, we're talking momentum and how hot everyone is right now, and the Broncos have literally robbed one from the death 2 times in a row. Are we relying on that again? Like, it's going to be, obviously, it's like a tale of 2 halves, but if the Broncos serve up what they've served in the first half, like they have pretty consistently over the last, say, 10 rounds, the Storm are going to win. So, I think if the Broncos can stay with them early, there's a chance, and they can use their goal kicking to win. But for me, the Storm, too much cohesion, too much time together, elite game management. Yeah, I just think that's too big an advantage in a grand final.
And I'll let Padonis get his bearings. I'll go to you, Benny Howard. Biggest advantage to either team?
Yeah, I feel like, we're probably all echoing the same things. Yeah, but it's got to be, I think, the same thing. I wonder, during that 2-week break, did Madge train this whole way where he's going to do that same sort of rotation for the rest of the final series? Or does he, again, then put a line through it and go, no, I'm just going to stay solid with a normal sort of rotation rather than moving Hunt from 6 or 7 to 9 and then, sort of putting Mam on. So that's the only thing that does worry me. And you've already said it as well. And I'm a big fan of a turnaround. Like, anyone that's been following me for a while is love taking a team with a bigger turnaround. I don't think there's as much of an advantage when it's a 7 versus a 9. But I think, when Payne Haas plays 80 minutes, I think that could carry on into, getting a 9-day turnaround would help him a lot right now, considering, like you said, Winnie, I still don't think he's 100%, but I think a Payne Haas with one leg is probably better than most forwards in the NRL still. So,
mate, in the press conference, they asked Bellamy, "What do you think about the turnaround? Is it an advantage?" And I thought, let's hear him BS his way and like be diplomatic through this. And he just said, "Yes, it is an advantage, but we've got to use it." I mean, he's admitting it himself. Like it's massive. For Donis, is it the biggest advantage in this game that you see?
It has to be Winnie. I think the teams are pretty even. I think the 2 days is an advantage, the 9 versus 7 at this time of the year, especially. I know Maguire downplayed it in his press conference and said 7 days is perfect, but I think that's more for internally, just to try to get his players aligned with what the expectations are for the week. But Melbourne had the ice baths and the saunas all weekend before Brisbane even played. So I do think it is an advantage. But one thing that would counteract that slightly is the fact that I like that Carrigan had the week off, didn't have to play and go through that grueling battle. We've seen Mam and Reynolds both come back seemingly fresh because coming off injuries, they haven't had that workload and toll in their legs. And Willison as well, that's another one to point out that he is fresh. He had an arm injury, so he would have been running and maintaining his fitness the whole time over the last 6 to 8 weeks. So I think he's an addition in that forward pack there that I heard Benny and the bets before mentioned that he thinks that the Storm have a better forward pack, but I don't believe so with Willison back. I think that they're pretty even, and if anything, I'd give the edge to the Broncos, but I think the rest is the biggest advantage winning.
When I heard Benny say that, I was actually wondering if you were going to argue that point for Donis. I think it is a fair argument. And look, okay, they've got an advantage with the turnaround for sure, but then you can say, but Brisbane did have the middle week of the finals off. It's not like Brisbane's had to play all the way through. And there is something to be said for just the adrenaline of getting up for one last game. Like your petrol tank might not be as full as Melbourne's, but you just got to pour it out for one last game. I remember 4 years ago, I could recognize how good Penrith were, but they had a grueling finals campaign because they'd lost in the first week of the finals. Remember, they had that war where they only beat Parramatta like 8-6,
Yep.
and then they had to beat Melbourne in a prelim, which kind of was their grand final. And my question mark was just, can Penrith get through another 80, whereas Souths, who had been idle before the prelim, were fresher. And Penrith, they won, and then afterwards, Ivan said about 7 of them shouldn't have even been playing with their injuries, but they won anyway. And that's probably what we're going to find out about players like like Payne Haas after the fact. It's amazing, sort of with the latest sports science, what teams and players can put themselves through. And just in case I don't remember to say this later, like when I've really looked at it closely for how Brisbane can win, you guys have mentioned Mam there. I think Mam has to play big minutes. Like whether you keep him out of the first 20 just because it's not going to be as open anyway, that's understandable. But I just think when you look at Melbourne and you've got such big running threats at 6 and 7, and you look at Brisbane, you got Reynolds and Hunt, I don't think that's going to be enough to break the game open. I think you need more threats out there. I know there's some question mark over too many chefs, like Walshy gets freed up more when there's less points of attack. But the other hand is you want the defense sort of their eyes darting to not know necessarily where the ball's going. And I think Ezra getting the game under his belt, I just think for Brisbane to generate enough points, it's going to be important that Ezra Mam has a big game for him, because let's not forget what he's capable of. We've seen it on this stage. And speaking of individual players, let's talk try scorers. That's obviously your forte, Nicole, so I'm going to go to you first, but I'm going to go around the table to everyone. You guys can let me know particular player you might back anytime try score, or maybe you would throw as a same game multi-leg, and why you like that matchup. But let's start with Nicole.
Yep, sweet. So I'll cover a first and last try scorer tip and an anytime try scorer as well. First and last try, you guys know I love my higher odds plays. Got Stefano Tukumanu. It is not the first time I've ever tipped him, but he scores the first try roughly every 34 games, last try every 25 games, 67s for him in a grand final. If you don't like the value, play it for fun. It's a nice price, about a middle forward who scores every 8 NRL games. Anytime try scorer, I wanted to go really wild, like a $29 shot or something, but unfortunately, all the guys that are paying really, really high prices are probably the guys that I don't want to actually tip. So I've gone with Xavier Willison. Obviously, he scored last week. Couple of things I really like about him. So he scores more than, I think it's a try every 6 games or so. You can get him for $10 on 365 Sportsbet and Dabble, which is almost double the price of what he's done throughout his career. And last little point on him, why I like it, with Carrigan back, he I think he's been playing roughly 40 minutes for the last the last few games that he's played. But I think these 35, 40 minutes that he plays this week will be a lot more dynamic. I don't know if you guys heard the commentary around him. He was absolutely gassed last week, whereas I think this time, and they even had like an actual setup play for him to crash over. Unfortunately, he knocked on. So he can score in a couple of different ways, and I think $10 is ridiculous for Wilson, for a guy who scored just last week.
Benny Williamson, you love a good try scorer tip as well. What do you got?
Yeah, I wish I had something as interesting as a $67 pop or a $10 pop. And, through the season, I've been trying to chase a little bit of value on these because I think that's where you get your bread and butter with try scorers. But, in a grand final, I've got, to start with, real boring, I've got Will Warbrick. The right wing is the highest conceded position for the Broncos. We did see Alamotti, Pants, was a Shiba and Karapani. Physically, I love the matchup of Warbrick against Karapani. I think Warbrick, I don't know how high their vertical jump is each. I'm not sure if he's got a huge edge in the air. But physically, I think the Brick probably runs straight through him. He's got an 80% strike rate against the Broncos, and don't like to read too heavily into historical strike rates because it really only tells so much of a story. But that right edge with Hughes, Katoa out that way. Katoa draws in so much traffic. I can see some ball movement out that way. And Brick, maybe even picking up the first try. I don't mind that. If I was looking for any value, Stefano obviously is going to be hot because there's heaps of chat, but Joshy King usually gets overlooked by the bookies, and the punters as well. And he scored a fair few tries early on in the season, and he positions himself really, really well under the posts. Harry Grant, the master of deception with the eyes telling a story, throw him a short ball, maybe he charges over. But nothing super exciting. A really interesting stat that I thought when I was looking through to try and find some value on try scorers against the Broncos. Eli Katoa is the only forward to score a try against the Broncos since the start of 2023. So that's 7 games where Katoa is the only forward to pick up a try. And I think he's got a 66%, 4 out of 6 strike rate against him. 310 is pretty good. I'm hoping for a late drift, and that might be wishful thinking. I know every man and his dog is going to be chasing Katoa, which scares me off a little bit. But he's been an absolute animal. So officially, the Brick, if I was looking for value, Joshy King, and you obviously can't go wrong with Katoa. Not a lot of love for many Broncos. Shibasaki lines up in the left center, which is the highest conceded position for the Storm. That's where I'd be putting my money if I was backing a Bronco. I think you can get him for $340. But I didn't find too many of them that I loved.
Did you, Padonis?
I'm happy to leave the try scoring plays to the other experts in here. I'm not really one to bet on that. But if I was going to pick one in terms of game script, I think Walsh exposed the gap between Howarth and Munster when they played at Suncorp a few weeks ago. So if they go down that right side again, I'd be looking at a crash ball for Jordan Ricky, and it'd probably be in the calls range there, closer to $10, I think.
He's paying $9, which is an insane price. So
I was just having a look. I'm going to steal Benny's best bets there. It was going to be Shiba. So I think I was looking at the stats just before, just get him up again. Yeah, he's got, I think the Storm side on the left center, they've scored 11. They've conceded 11 times. And that side in general, 27 versus 22 on the right-hand side. So there's a bit of an edge there. I think, Shiba is a bit quiet last week after shaving off the goatee. So I feel like maybe he'll probably be a bit more into his skin now that he's had second week without it. So,
and Nicole, I'm going to now ask everyone if they've got any other official bets that they would make. Or if I just haven't asked you the right question yet, are there any other sort of major points or notes any of you guys have got that you want to share? Now would be the time, Nicole.
So I'll keep it simple. The last play that I had was the Clive Churchill medal. Again, annoyingly, I'd love to go for a crazy $50 or $80 play. Unfortunately, didn't find anything in that range. Look, I've kept it simple. I've gone with Ben Hunt Obviously, the 2015 redemption arc, that's an obvious one. I think the fact that he'll be most likely playing two positions throughout the game, I know it'll just make it interesting. I think it'll make him stand out, the fact that he gets two different opportunities during the same game, two different positions. And I think the last one, sentimental value, obviously he's a Queensland hero. So I think if he gets the job done for the Broncos, obviously Walsh and Haas are two of the favourites, but I just think Ben Hunt, who's paying $21 on 365 and PointsBet, relatively similar prices elsewhere, is a nice, juicy Clive Churchill tip.
Benny Williamson, do you remember pre the decider in 2022, we were backing like our long shot Queenslanders in case Queensland got the upset, and we had Benny Hunt at like 120s for man of the series. And when he was streaking down Suncorp there, I thought he was a fair chance. It actually went to Paddy Carrigan, but I think you were on the same. I'm actually going to give everyone a chance to do score prediction and Clive, so you don't have to give me your Clive yet to the other fellas. Have you got any other bets in the chamber or any other notes that you wanted to share, Benny Williamson?
Yeah, I've got a few bets, so in the interest of time, I won't smash the write-ups too hard. I was actually on Paddy Carrigan as well, and I think I picked him up at 34s, so I was pretty happy at the end of that series when they put his name out either way. So best bets wise, I've got 2 units on the Storm over 1.5 tries in the first half. I think 40.5 is pretty well bang on in terms of an actual total, but because of the gravity of grand finals and finals games, the totals are, always sit around that sort of range. And I think 1.5 is a really good line. The Broncos have conceded 2 tries in 7 of the last 10 games. And as good as they've been in attack, they've been defensively liable, especially in the first half. So I'll pick that up at $1.77 on lads. 2 units because it's $1.77. Not a great price, but good enough for me. Second half, I've got same play, different team. Broncos over 1.5 tries. Just a stats-based thing there. The Storm have let that in 7 out of 10 times as well, but it's the 10th time, so it would be 7 out of 9 if you don't factor in the last 10 rounds, just to keep recency there. Brick, as I mentioned, is an official player. Got a unit on him at $2.30. But a fun same-game multi that I cooked up earlier that I think a few of the punters could get around. I think it's $18.75. It's the Broncos under 3.5 tries and over 18.5 points, which would have cruised in last game if Karapani didn't pick up that last try in the 79th minute. But as I sort of alluded to earlier in the game, I think if the Broncos are to win, there's an edge in the kicking, and I think they'll take some penalties early if they get them. And, points are a premium. Whilst I've got a few overs on the 1.5 line, I think 3 tries is probably bang on. Few penalties, they could get, 22 points, stay under 3 tries, or stay under 4, and get the win. So I don't mind that at a juicy odds, and I'll save the Clive Churchill for the end.
That's very doable, actually. You want them to convert all 3. You do need 3 tries because you're realistically not going to get 2 tries and still get to 19 points. But it's possible. But I do like that correlation because teams would take the 2. And Benny, sorry, other people probably heard it, but I missed it. The Brisbane one is a first half tries or a second half tries?
Sorry, no. The Brizzy's a second half one.
Yes, okay.
Over 1.5 tries in the second half. It's $1.90. And just on the same game multi, it's $18.75 on Sportsbet, which might be fair. Like I find it hard to price these, but it's $8 on 365 and $11 on Ladbrokes. So you are getting, a fair price on Sportsbet for that one there. Anti-correlated, obviously. So yeah.
That's a great start. Like I've spoken to people about this before. I guess when you compare same game multis across the board, sometimes you just wonder, does it show how much others are ripping you off? But when you're getting an outlying price, you can't be doing too badly. For Donis, you've been outstanding again with your play of the week. Last week you had Brisbane +4. I thought, Walshy has condemned Padonis to a push here, but you got another try. So happy days. And have you got an official play or plays for the final?
So yes, I was on the Broncos last week. I like to try to keep unbiased as I'm giving out these plays because I care about my record more than my team in a lot of respects, and that's part of being like a handicapper. But I think when I look at the line for this game, I think that the line's pretty fair in my estimation. I think the 2 sides are even. and I do give the Storm a slight edge in terms of the rest for the 9 versus 7 days. So you could argue the line could be in that 1.5 range, and there are 2.5s available, but not really enough of an edge for me to say that it's worth a 6 out of 10 play and that'll win 60% of the time. So I don't have an official best bet for this game. I think it could go down to the wire. I think touching on Benny's sentiments earlier from the post that I put in last week's tip on the Broncos there against the Panthers. I think if you include last week's game against the Panthers, now that last 20 minutes, it's 66-12, the aggregate score that the Broncos are since that round 23 game against the Storm. So I think their fitness is going to hold up, and it is an advantage at this time of the year. And I think all the hard work that Madge has put in at preseason is really showing at the moment. So I do like Benny's angle there if you like the Broncos for that over 1.5 tries in the second half with that fitness edge. But no official plays for me, and hopefully Brisbane can get the win and right the wrongs from a few years ago. But I do have two exotic or value plays that I will share. So these are pretty good odds compared to the market. So if people out there like me thinking that Brisbane can put in a complete 80-minute performance, because I think they've been guilty to date of being a little bit patchy. I think so far in the 2 finals games, they've only been leading for 12 minutes and they've played 174. So I think that if they go into the similar setup that they have, they're not going to run down Melbourne. So I think this could be a complete 80-minute performance. Maguire's even alluding to the fact that they're still building towards something. And I think that Brisbane could blow the Storm out here in this one, with all the factors considered with the rest and everything else. I wouldn't be surprised by it, and could bookend the season similar to how they started against the Roosters. So 2 players that I'm looking at are on Ladbrokes and Neds, Brisbane 19 plus at $12, and then also on Bet365 $34, Brisbane 30 plus. So something for the exotic players out there.
And I mean, that would have sounded pretty unlikely. If I do a correlation or a comparison to the AFL, the Lions were like $2.60, $2.70 head to head, and at one stage we're winning by like 50 or 60 points. I think against Geelong, that was unexpected. Or I think back to the Super Bowl, the Eagles were a slight outsider, and led by led 40-6 at one point. So it can happen. The point a couple of you boys made there about playing a first half versus second half, you guys know I think a lot about that. It's a interesting argument in this one, because Brisbane's got that habit of closing games strong, and there's no question about their fitness. But because Melbourne are the fresher team and better prepared, you also could see Brisbane getting worn out, and I could see the Storm finishing strong. So I think the start is key for Brisbane. But what I like about Benny's play too, of playing Brisbane's second half overs, even if you sort of think Melbourne might win, Brisbane's not going to die wondering. Like, they'll do anything to put on points at the end, because they've got that belief, because they've come from 14 down so many times. Benny Howard, did you have any other points on your notepad or any bets you want to share?
Yeah, I just love how Padonis won't take him plus 2.5, but he thinks they're going to win by 30 plus. I reckon that's awesome. But I think he's right. He's right in the fact, though, Broncos do have a lot of variance. I can definitely agree with that. So it's one of those things. I think they could – he's right. If they put in an 80 minutes performance where everything Walsh touches is gold, I reckon they could probably slaughter the Storm. But, yeah, whether or not they can do that with the sort of the spine sort of jumbled up a little bit at the moment, yeah, it's a hard one for me. There's no official bet for me. Like I said, I feel like that turnaround is too much of an edge for the Storm. And I sort of do lean the Broncos if it was a 7-7. I just feel like the narrative there with Hunt and Walsh and just how everything is going around, the Broncos supporter base, they're probably the most passionate in the NRL as well. So I just feel like it's a good narrative if the Broncos did win, if you like putting the tinfoil hat on. Something we all haven't really touched on is the weather. So it's like 29 degrees for kickoff. 7:30 is a bit of a heat wave. So that could favour the Broncos as well. I feel like being a bit more of a hotter sort of day might scare those cold Melbournians off. But yeah, there's no bet for me as such. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good line at plus 2.5. I'd have to lean the Broncos if you put a gun in my head though.
You Broncos
How
fans are
about you,
starting to
Under?
clutch at straws. We're talking about the weather now. 29 degrees, too hot for the Storm players, he reckons. 30 plus. I actually do quite like the 30 plus, but 29
Thanks,
degrees.
Benny.
That's gold.
Look, if
And
I as a Brisbane fan, I am worried that maybe we have played our grand final, given what that victory meant in front of the home crowd, getting one over Penrith. But then you listen to all the players, and like the whole mindset has been about one more game, and the job's not finished yet. So, the motivation is going to be high for both teams, and interesting to hear Winnie's take on a side.
yeah, I've got a couple of best bets. I mean, I'll be honest. If you tell me someone wins this game 20 plus, like I'm almost certain that it's Melbourne. I could see Melbourne doing that. I struggle to see Brisbane. I think Brisbane have to win it tighter. I've got a couple of plays to share, but I've got a best bet here from the Undertaker to have a listen to.
G'day guys, Matty here. Happy grand final week all, live from the car. Didn't have much time today. Look, my tip pre-season was the Storm to win the premiership. It's grand final week now. I see no reason to change. I've got enough respect for Brisbane that they're going to keep it close. They're definitely the more explosive team. But look at that spine from the Storm. You got Grant, Pappenhausen, Hughes, Munster. That's just too much for me. I think spines win comps. So give me the Storm, but give me the Storm 1-12. I haven't looked for the best price yet, but you're going to get about $3 for that. So Melbourne Storm 1-12, my bet of the week, last one for the year. Good luck all. Have a good day.
So Undertaker, liking the Storm. I spoke before about the press conferences. Nathan Cleary was asked, Jesus, Brisbane team's pretty good. Have they got what it takes to win the comp? How hard are they to stop? And in my mind, I made a mental note, like the sooner he brings up Melbourne, the more he actually thinks Melbourne will win. And Nathan's response to how good Brisbane are is Melbourne can do all those things too. He said the Storm straight away. I think the Storm is the only side I could play in this game. They are so complete, so many threats. And you guys mentioned it. I don't want to say simply experience because Brisbane starting halves, as I mentioned before, are combined age 70. But the 1, 6, 7, 9 have played all together and trained together since 2021. And it's those combinations, and you boys have mentioned it, under pressure when you've got to come up with something that can be decisive, as opposed to Brisbane, who's sort of chopped and changed a little bit with their key positions. Brisbane can win, but it'll take a 10 out of 10 defensive effort. Like that's something you can't produce every single week, though Brisbane has done it twice in their last 3 games. So the great thing about a big game is you get some more special markets that you can't necessarily attack every game. And I'm actually going to play a couple statistical markets as my best bets. And these are somewhat proxies for Melbourne to win, but I think they're even better than Melbourne to win because I think Melbourne could lose and these bets could still win. Of course, it can go the other way too. But on better, I'm going to play Brisbane to make the most tackles at $1.80 because generally the team that makes the most tackles loses. But Brisbane is the type of team that can be comfortable defending in long stretches and backing their defense and tend to strike a bit faster when they are in attack. And Storm is the type of team that I don't think will want to rush anything and will back themselves to wear Brisbane out. And you've got a Brisbane team that's just thinking, we just keep them in reach. We can make that big play. And then a similar bet, I'm also just going to play team with more time in possession, Melbourne, for similar thinking there at $1.83 on better. So you find both of those under statistical markets. All right, you guys can respond to my play if you want when I throw to you. Let's make it the last sort of round here and give me your winning team, your margin, and your Clive. Can't see Nicole, but he did already give us his Clive. So we'll go to Benny Williamson next.
Yeah, Broncos 30 plus. pretty boring. I do think cowards die 1,000 deaths, but Storm 1-12. And if I'm going Clive Churchill, Katoa, I think you can get him at low 20s. I think I saw 21 somewhere. Probably has been the best second rower in the comp. Great attacking weapon. Fair try-scoring record against the Broncos. If they win and he scores a try, he defends well too. Plenty of tackles. I think if narrative-wise, if the Broncos win, I hate backing shorties in the Clive Churchill just because I don't, $6 on Harry Grant sounds like AIDS to me. But you can get Shibasaki at mid-50s. And whilst I think that's pretty left field, I don't mind it because I've seen a lot of chat around Stags. Right centers have only scored against the Storm twice this season, and that side has been pretty good in terms of defending centers. And I know Tony's been in tons of form, but the Broncos are going to be aware of that too. We've been talking narratives leading the grand finals. Ben Tolte's a fantastic story, but how about Shibasaki's resurgence this season? He's like 307. He's older than sand, and he has been tearing it up. Worth some loose change at 50s. Katoa is my pick. Storm 1 to 12. But I'll definitely have 100, at least 100 on Storm. Sorry, Broncos 30 plus because I can't not now. If that gets up and I don't have any money on it, I'll be too upset.
And it's probably prudent for me to say as well, when someone gives a super value tip like Padonis did, right? What was the odds on Brisbane 30 plus again, Padonis?
34 on Bet365.
Yeah. When you tip something at 34, it's not the same as saying that will happen. People forget that, like the year I said Titans top 4 at $11 is not the same as saying Titans will come top 4. But anyway, Nicole, I know you already gave us Clive Churchill. It's already slipped my mind. Remind me again who it was and give us team winner and margin.
Yep, I'll go real quick. I've got Broncos 18-16. Look, honestly, either team could win. I've just personally
went Hunty, wasn't it?
It was Hunty at 21's Clive Churchill. One thing I didn't say in that, and it's been discussed in the media a little bit, there was the Jared Hayne run, the Ben Barber run, the Tommy Turbo run. One of those won the grand final. So purely from a sentimental value factor, I think it would be awesome for Walsh to go all the way, just from a fan's perspective.
Padonis.
How about the Pappenhausen run, Nicole? How's that going?
I was just about to say I finished reading what Padonis sent me, so yeah, I've done my bit.
Very good. My score prediction is Brisbane 40-8, and my Clive Churchill left fielder would be, and it's dependent on team list because I don't think it's going to move that much, but I think it's going to be Ezra Mam at $26, the highest price that I've seen on Tab. Next best would be 23 on Dabble. I think you spoke about redemption arc before on Ben Hunt there, Nicole, but no better than Ezra Mam as well from 2 years ago. Was 15 seconds away from winning it himself. And with all the turmoil that he's gone through pre-season and the suspension and all the backlash he's copped, no better story to tell than him coming on and changing the game. Because I do think even if Brisbane can blow him out, I think it's going to be tight for long periods. So I think Ezra Mam coming on the 25th minute, I do think that he will start on the bench, and that could be a key factor in why the game changes and why Brisbane would blow him out. So the judges would look at someone like Ezra Mam as the reason or the catalyst of why the scoreline happened the way it did. So that's why I like that angle.
I was trying to help you out and saying, look, Padonis is not saying Brisbane's going to win 30 plus. And then you said your score prediction is 40-8. Look, if Mam ends up starting too, that's going to be sensational odds. I hope that he wouldn't get robbed by the voters who don't want the controversial pick. But I definitely think he's going to be vitally important. And, man, he had it. That had to already be engraved 2 years ago. Benny, Howard, what do you think in terms of the score and the Clive?
I'm going to go Broncos 19-18 with Benny Hunt field goal. Just had a look at Shiba on Sportsbet, Benny, and anytime try scorer and Clive Churchill actually goes down in odds. Sportsbet, they're great for that, aren't they? So, I don't think he can get it is diabolical. I don't think he can get the Clive Churchill without scoring. So one of those things. But he's $56 on there, so it's not a bad shout. It is pretty left field, like you said, though. But yeah, I probably will go Payne Haas as well for the Dally Clive Churchill medal. I think if Storm win, I'm going to go Munster Magic.
Well, that leads perfectly into my pick. I've got Storm 24-18, and I have got Munster. You talk about narrative, the year he's had, but losing his father there during Origin and the way he stepped up. And what you heard so much this year was that Munster is one of the all-time great Origin players, okay? But let's just have a closer look at Munster's legacy now. He's playing in his 6th grand final. 6. He's won 2 comps, but they are favourites to make it a 3rd. So just imagine Munster, 6 grand finals, 3 comps. He's won 5 Origin series. He's won a Wally. Now, people talk about Nathan Cleary. If he retired today, his resume. Nathan's 5 grand finals, 4 premierships, but 3 Origin series, no Wallies. They've played alongside each other at World Cup, so they've got the same World Cup accolades. I know Money is 4 years older than Nat, and I'm not necessarily saying this because I've already said Cleary is my GOAT in terms of best player I've ever seen on the field. But other people will say, like, my point is, if Munster has a big game on Sunday, people will take the word Origin out of describing him, and he'll no longer be one of the great Origin players. He'll just be one of the great players, and it'll be debatable who's had the better, like, last 8 years of rugby league, because you forget like how much Munster's achieved because he was on the back end of the original big 3 in Melbourne. And I think someone mentioned that before too, that like Bellyache actually hasn't won a comp without that original big 3 yet. I know Munster said it was a big deal to win the Origin in 2020, the first time Queensland lifted the shield without the big boys. Now they want to do that at their clubland. You know, Harry Grant hasn't won a comp yet for as good as he is. So Munster, I think, the ability to impact the game, and he'll smell that medal too if Melbourne's on top, and he'll just keep on injecting himself. $7.50 on 365 is my Clive pick there. Has anyone else got any other bets or notes they wanted to share? Otherwise, we'll go around. If you have anything, give it to us. Otherwise, you can just sort of sign off. But I appreciate you boys all so much for your contribution week in, week out to the show this year. Nicole.
Can someone do the stat work on? Oh, sorry. I thought. Sorry. No, you go.
Go for it.
I'll come to you, Benny. I'll just go round because obviously it's hard with the 5 of us there.
Yeah, no, sorry. I thought you were just saying if anyone needed anything. I was just going to say, how many? Oh, sorry. No, you go. Cool. Go.
I'll be super quick. A really random point that I thought of, and I actually haven't heard this on any podcasts and stuff just yet, but the Broncos' last 2 games have been daytime games. So I just thought, like, you know, they've only had 2 games in the last 3 weeks, both daytime games, now playing the 8 p.m. game. I know they've played it in all season, but I just thought that'd be a little bit interesting compared to the Storm, who have won 2 nighttime finals. That was my random point. But aside from that, obviously, just Google, Wiki, Linktree, all that stuff's free out there. When you guys were talking about try scores, I was looking at prices of the odds comparison, so making sure we had the highest price and stuff. Our Discord will be popping off on grand final day, over 5,000 people in there. But thank you so much, Jacob, for having us, and it was really good fun.
And mate, the tool does it do Clive this year as well? Prices for the
it doesn't do Clive, unfortunately, but I'll do a bit of grunt work to see what I can do.
You've done it in the past though, which has been really helpful, like man of the match and big games and stuff. You're crazy not to sort of check the odds comparison tool there, guys. If you're betting on any sort of markets with a bit of variance. Benny, thank you for all your contributions this year. And have you got a final word for us, Benny Williamson?
No, mate, nothing additional. I've talked to everyone to death here. I've got a few plays on that one. Those are all my official plays out through the premium service. I just hope it's going to be a cracker game. But congrats on, what's a 60% season win?
Well, I'm at 59% now, dipped in the finals. But I got 2 bets on the line. So
we'll call it 60. We'll call the game off early and we'll call it 60. But no, congrats on another.
Up.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Congrats on another good season, mate. Appreciate you getting us all involved, and happy hunting with the final, lads. Hope you make heaps and rob the bookies.
Thanks, Benny. Padonis.
Thanks, fellas, for having me on. It's been a pleasure as always. I know some people were disappointed haven't got a best bet on the line in the biggest game, but it goes to show that sometimes the bookies do get it right, and you can't really find value in an edge. But for all the Brisbane fans out there, looking forward to packing out a core stadium alongside you guys and dominating the crowd. So Bronx Nation, baby, all the way.
I was going to check. So you got a ticket. You're going to be in the house, Padonis.
100%. I know it hasn't really worked out the last few. I was there 23. I was live in 2015 as well. So Brisbane have been involved in some of the best grand finals of all time, but we've been the runners-up on both of those occasions. I'm more than happy to have a shit grand final where we win.
Could be 3rd time lucky, but we need to factor that in. Padonis in the house probably give an extra point in the handicapping to Brisbane. All right, sorry I made you wait. Benny Howard, what have you got, bro?
You're all right. I was just thinking then, like, how many times has a losing side won the Clive Churchill? Because I was just thinking then, if you do go money Melbourne to win, you get an extra $1 on Bet365. So just throwing that out there. But I was just thinking then, while I was waiting, it was if anyone's going to win it on a losing side, it might be Payne Haas. Might be get a bit of value there going Melbourne to win and Payne Haas for Clive Churchill medal, because he does really want to win a premiership, and he's made it pretty vocal in the media. So maybe, you know, the NRL might gift him a CCM on a losing side.
Nicole's nailed it there. Last 15 years, those are the two that come to mind for me as well. Whiten for the Raiders, lost to the Roosters, but he got it. I was on him that night too. I was happy about that. And DCE losing side Manly against the Roosters. So both times it was against the Roosters. 2013. Yes.
I wonder what it is statistically though, because that would suck really hard if you went on the team to win and the Clive Churchill and then they
yes, I mean I don't mind it with
two times in the last decade and a bit is actually quite surprising.
Yeah, a bit rigged sometimes. Just quietly.
Well, that's the other challenge. Look, so that's going to wrap it, guys. So plenty of bets that people can sink their teeth into. We don't know what's going to happen Sunday. We've given you some various opinions and breakdowns. And I don't know what's going to happen beyond Sunday for the TryPod. That's why I said, you know, this could be the last ever show. But if you have appreciated the 11 seasons or any part of that, guys, please still like the video, hit subscribe or follow to find out, you know, what does come next. Drop a comment, please, anywhere to let me know your feedback of how you found this season or what you'd like to see or how it could improve it if I am able to bring back the pod for a 12th year, which is a big if, but your support, you know, can make the difference and means everything. And this is not the time, because we've spoken long enough, to talk about all the considerations that go into it. Enjoy the action, guys. Thank you so much to all the sharpshooters, Nicole, Benny Williamson, Padonis, Benny Howard, Undertaker with his clip, and throughout the year as well, not just tonight in the virtual studio, guys. It's really added to the show. I know the audience has appreciated it. To our audience, thank you for being part of the journey with us this season. Best of luck if you're having a punt this weekend. Of course, do it responsibly. And Lego.